This is the Turtle Dojo, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast with your hosts, Adam and Chris.
Welcome to another episode of the Turtle Dojo. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Doing great, Adam. Happy to join you here once again in the Turtle Dojo. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing well. It's always a good time talking turtles, and especially going back today and revisiting a classic, I'm sure, for both of us. We're going to be talking about the first 5 episodes of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon from 1987. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct.
And I know that if you listen to the audio version of the show, we've done this before, but it was a little disjointed because we started the podcast with somebody else, did 2 episodes of the show. Chris came on board, did the other 3, and then carried forward. Then a couple of recordings got corrupted, and we some of the episodes that we did got lost, and that was all before we started the YouTube channel. So I figured, and Chris and I discussed it, and since Chris is now firmly a member of the Trinity at this network, now would be a good time to get the animated series reviews on the vidcast portion, and instead of trying to remember picking up where we left off, we will just rip the band-aid off and start fresh from square one. So that's what we're going to do today. It'll be the first 5 episodes. Season 1 was a mini-series of about 5 episodes, and it was one big continuous story. So that's how we'll cover it, Chris.
Yep.
Before we get to the review itself, give our viewers sort of a little background on how you came to the show and things of that nature. Not the podcast, but the show, the animated series.
Well, the episodes that we are going to be discussing today were my introduction to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was 6 years old in 1987, and I remember very clearly the commercials coming on television for this new cartoon that was debuting, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I was like, wow, that's a mouthful, but it sounds super cool, and the animation looked cool. So I was waiting for the very first episode because of the commercials that I had been seeing. So I was there from the very beginning of the animated series. I was too young to have been reading the comics at the time.
Sure.
But I jumped in with the series, and I remember that Christmas was a big Ninja Turtles Christmas in my house because I got the 4 turtles and Splinter and Shredder, and a couple of the Foot Clan soldiers. I got a lot of stuff. That was super cool. But yeah, I've been there since the beginning of this animated series in 87.
Awesome. Yeah, I came... it's funny because I don't remember exactly when I got to the show. Like, I was young, very young. I got in quite early. I don't know if I was watching it right from the first season, because I was 4, so I don't really remember, did I start from, ground, the ground floor, or was it a year or 2 in before I started? But the nature of these shows is that they would always show reruns. So
sure, during
the course of whether I was 4 or 6 when I started, I definitely had seen, the first run of episodes, like the first 5, when I was smaller. And I remember it as being my first introduction to the Turtles, because then I was excited for the live action movie based on having seen the cartoon.
Sure.
And I remember that my sort of cartoon hierarchy, since The Rock likes to talk about the hierarchy of power in the DC universe, the hierarchy of animation that I watched was, and again, I don't know if I got in. I could probably guarantee that I didn't get in on the ground floor of He-Man when it started, because I was just born probably when He-Man started, the cartoon anyway. He-Man and I are the same age, but I remember the first cartoons I saw in the order that I saw them were the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Turtles, and then I can't remember what I watched in the 2 years in between, but then Batman the Animated Series. Those were the three that were those were the top three things that consumed my mornings / afternoons whenever they would come on here. In the airing cycles. So those are the three. And in terms of the figures, back in the day, I had the four Turtles, Splinter, Shredder, and I had the van.
Yeah.
At one point. I don't recall if I had the blimp or not, but I had the van.
I had the blimp. It was so cool.
I can imagine.
Yeah. It was so cool.
Then it's funny because in terms of collecting Turtles comics, that came much more recent. That came with the IDW stuff. So I don't have a long history with those. I've read some of the older ones via collections that they put out that I've picked up, but in terms of actual physical single issue print stuff, that all came with the IDW stuff. So that's a little bit of where. But the large formative years of my understanding of the Turtles came from the animated series we're going to talk about today. So that's where we are. So Chris, where do we want to start with this review? You take us away. Where do you want to kick it off?
Well, one thing I just wanted to point out is that the supervising producer of this show is Fred Wolf, and people might know him from a bunch of other animated series that he's been this producer on, like DuckTales. He worked on 66 episodes of that show as the supervising producer. Alvin and the Chipmunks as well. And something that I don't know if it was exported to Canada, but James Bond Jr.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. He did like 65 episodes on that too. So that was just something I noticed going through the credits. I knew I recognized his name, and so I just wanted to point that out because there's, like we do with comics where we talk about the writer and
the creative team. That's right. Yeah.
Just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so I guess if we're gonna attack this as a whole, I do have individual notes for individual episodes.
We'll go through the notes. Yeah.
We can kind of get through those as we go through it. Okay. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are 4 humanoid turtles who have been trained as ninjas by their master, a humanoid rat named Splinter. Splinter was once a human named Hamato Yoshi, who fled to America in disgrace when he was framed by his enemy Oroku Saki for the attempted murder of their sensei in the Foot Clan. Years later, their paths cross again as Saki, now going by the name of Shredder, leads the now evil Foot Clan on a crime wave through New York, and Splinter and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles team up with news reporter April O'Neil to stop them as Shredder sets his sights on destroying the Turtles and Splinter.
Fairly straightforward description. It makes it's a if you're going to give a Cole's Notes version of what the Turtles are, that's the way to go. What I liked about this show was that, I guess in retrospect, this kind of, I'm sure it was done on purpose by the makers of the movie, but they're not exactly the same. But the opening where the gangs are kind of running amok in New York and April is attacked. and saved by the turtles. I mean, in the movie, it was Raphael that saved her, and then brought her down to the sewers. In the cartoon here, she makes her way down to the sewer to try and evade attacks, and all 4 turtles rescue her. And I like the way it was done in terms of, for the first bit, when the turtles are fighting, the gang, they're in silhouette. You don't see them full on, right?
You don't see them until April does.
Yeah. So I like that. That was very clever. And of course, she's kind of all flustered and everything, which makes a lot of sense.
And this April and the movie April both kind of freak out when they see Splinter.
Yeah, because, I mean, a humanoid rat, that would probably freak just about everybody out, I would think. I mean, if you saw that in real life and acted perfectly normally in regards to it, more power to you, because even me as a fan of this stuff, if I saw I wouldn't say giant, but larger than expected rat that can walk on 2 legs and could speak, yeah, that would probably freak me out. And then, I'd probably faint too. And then when I came to it, I'd be like, okay, where are the turtles? Yeah, if you're here, there's got to be 4 turtles in close proximity. But yeah, so I like the reaction. And so what did you think of that idea of them being in silhouette and not revealed right off the bat?
Well, it adds a little mystery to it, you know, and I think it's a smart idea to use April as the viewer's point of view into the story. Before you learn anything about the turtles, you're hearing April report on the television about a crime wave that is broken into, I think it's 3 different scientific facilities.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of like following her into the story, into the beginning of the story, and so you don't see the turtles until she does.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a nice framing device.
Yeah. I also like the fact that we do get the origin really quickly.
Splinter pretty much lays it out for her, like straight up.
Flashbacks kind of thing. But told as a story to April.
Yeah, and you get the background of him and Shredder, who you don't know is Shredder at the time that he's telling the story. But you do get the background on the beef between Yoshi and Saki.
Yeah. Which is cool to see. It's done a little different in the show than it was in the books and the movie. I mean, in the books and the movie, it was because of the love of a woman, and then I think in the comic book, the woman in question is murdered. They're not going to put that in an animated series aimed at children. So what you get is Oroku Saki kind of sets him up when the Grand Sensei of the Foot Clan comes for a visit to the dojo. He puts the knife in between Hamato Yoshi's uniform and the wall, so he's stuck. So when the sensei comes in, he can't bow, and that's some big disrespect. And he's tossed out of the dojo there, and out of sheer embarrassment, he decides that, well, let me flee to an entirely different country. To which adult me wonders, well, couldn't you at some point go and explain the situation?
Like, hey man, I'm sorry about that. I wasn't trying to disrespect
this is what
you.
Actually, I don't know. That would seem a lot easier than I'm just going to uproot my life and head to New York. I don't know, but
hang out with a bunch of rats in the sewer.
Yeah, but I guess for the purpose of what would need to happen, that wouldn't be much. I mean, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be a very interesting show, and I don't think the turtle mythology would have lasted as long as it has if that was the story. but just something as an adult, you question, well, why didn't you do? And then you're like, yeah, okay, it's a Ninja Turtle show. Enough trying to rationalize why he didn't do this, why he didn't do that.
Bring that up, and throughout these 5 episodes, there were a few times where I found myself asking certain questions.
Yeah.
And I had to remind myself that A, this is 1987.
Yeah.
And B, it's aimed at 5 to 9-year-olds, not a 41-year-old man. So they are not going to have the same questions of logic that an adult is going to have, and that's okay. We have to take the show for what it is.
Yeah. At some point, you have to put yourself back in your 4 to 6 year old mindset and just roll with it. But I like how the origin was told, because if you're a kid first coming into this, that's a perfect explainer, and it gets you right into the the thick of things. Another interesting change from the comic mythology and what's presented in the show is when the turtles fall in the sewer. Remember that in the show, the kid trips and the turtles fall in the sewer.
Right, he spills his bowl.
Yeah,
holding them.
Right. In the comics and the movie, there is an accident where the kid still loses the thing, and the bowl and the turtle still fall in, but there's much more danger to the kid. The kid potentially almost gets hit by a car and the mutagen. So it's a little bit more like the stakes are higher in the comic and the live action thing, because again, this is aimed at children, and those were not. I mean, they were, but they were allowed to, push it a little further. And
you get a little more with a PG movie rating than you get for a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, and you'll, I don't know, I mean, you'll remember that the theory is that a lot of fans and even the Turtles creators themselves have postulated that, in their heads, because they were such big fans of Daredevil, they were kind of making a play on the Daredevil moment where young Matt Murdock, gets into that accident, and the I don't want to say mutagen, but the acid or whatever it is,
some kind of chemical
gets into his eye, and then he's blinded, and the whole nine, and the powers, the whole nine yards. So in their mind, there's a universe where, and I'm going to mention this again, and I'm going to mention it until somebody gives it to me. There's a perfect crossover in the comics between the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Daredevil.
Right.
I've gotten TMNT and Power Rangers, which I loved. I got TMNT and Batman, which many times, which I loved all of them. We were close to getting, Chris, and you'll appreciate this, when DC still had the rights to Masters of the Universe, we were going to get a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Masters of the Universe crossover.
Ooh.
That never happened because then the rights changed, which sucks, but maybe one day we'll still get that. But I want that Daredevil TMNT crossover. I mean, it's right there. The hand, the foot.
Right.
Come on.
So would you have the hand and the foot be in the crossover? Would the hand and the foot team up?
Yeah, of course. And then in the sequel, we'd have the torso join in and every other body part associated with it. No, but yeah, no, I would love to, I think it just fits. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes more sense, if I'm being honest, as much of a Batman fan as I am, given the closeness of the origin stories and the fact that they both take place in New York. A Daredevil TMNT crossover makes more sense than Batman TMNT, if you think about it.
It does require less work to put them together because theoretically they're already roaming the same city.
Yeah. So it is what it is, but I'm still holding out hope. But that's the connection that the creators were intending, Eastman and Laird. that origin was their nod to Daredevil and Frank Miller. So there's that. And then that was pretty much the first episode in a nutshell, right? It was just mainly the origin or the first part.
Yeah, for the most part. The other thing that happens in the first episode is we get introduced to the Technodrome.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
episode 2 is when things really start to kick off. Episode 1's a lot of setup, a lot of flashback telling the origin story, them meeting April, all that stuff. Things get kicked into high gear a little in the upcoming episodes.
Yeah. All right. So let's keep going.
Okay. In episode 2, we meet Krang, who is, of course, at this point, a classic Ninja Turtles villain. We learn that he is sort of in control of Shredder, and that Shredder is getting certain things from Krang, certain technologies, in addition for Shredder's promise to build a body for Krang. Krang is an interdimensional being who has come over from Dimension X, and somehow in the journey, he was transferred out of his body and is just a brain with little arms and a face.
Yeah, and it's a very disturbing. I got to tell you, I never realized before. Like rewatching it now, gives you a whole new appreciation of just how disturbing Krang looks.
And imagine if they did it in live action, how that would have to look.
Well, they did in briefly in 2016's.
Oh, that's true.
What's it called?
Out of the Shadows.
Out of the Shadows, Out of the Shell, whatever the hell it was called. Yeah, they did it. I mean, I didn't dislike that movie. I mean, it had its issues, but they did it briefly. I would like to see it done. Like at some point, I'd like to see him as the villain of an entire movie.
Sure.
But yeah, if they did it a little bit more scarier than they did in that 2016, I mean that villain has the potential to be quite disturbing, given the way he looks, right?
Right.
And what's cool about this is in episode 2 they still keep it very earthbound, despite the introduction of Krang.
Well, you hear about Dimension X, but you don't see it yet.
Yeah.
What we do see is the creation of Bebop and Rocksteady, as Shredder uses his mutagen to transform 2 of his lackeys who we met in the first. Weren't Bebop and Rocksteady 2 of the gang who tried to jump April in the first episode?
Yeah.
So yeah, in this episode, Shredder gives, he's got like 4 of his henchmen together, and he's saying he needs volunteers for an experiment. No one wants to do it. And he says, well, the 2 that volunteer for this will get to get some payback against the Turtles.
Yeah.
And so they all leap at the chance then. But we get the creation of Bebop and Rocksteady. And then for the first time, we go inside Channel 6 and we meet April's boss, Vern. So we're introduced to some new characters here in this episode.
Yeah, it's very interesting how it's funny because Shredder is like, he's always sort of criticizes all 4 of them. He basically says they're idiots, they're incompetent, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you surrounded yourself with these people. It's like when Lex calls himself, why am I surrounded in the Superman movies? Why do I, the greatest criminal mind, but I'm surrounded by these idiots? Yeah, well, you pick him, right?
You hired him, buddy.
You hired him, so you got nobody else to blame but yourself. But did he not promise them powers as well? Because I don't know if you sign up for, like, if somebody says, I'm going to do an experiment on you, and if it works, you'll get a chance of revenge. Like, that wouldn't be enough for me to say, give it a go. I think there were powers.
Yeah, I think he did say you'll have like the powers of 10 men or something like that.
Yeah, and I like the part where one of them said, I can't remember which one said, he's when they're strapping in, and he's like, I should have brought some comic books. I thought that was a clever little nod to the fact that the property started as a comic book.
Sure, and I was sitting there thinking, like, I'm 41 years old, and I would like some comic books to read if I were trying to kill some time too.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, it's cool that we're getting. What I like the way this 5-episode sort of miniseries kind of worked is that it set the table with what now is the the core cast of TMNT characters.
Yeah.
The most popular. And to be fair, when you go back and read the original comics, that's how they kind of did it in the comic, where the first handful of issues, the first year was really introducing who would become, the top tier characters in TMNT lore. So the cartoon kind of follows in that vein, if you will. And I find it interesting that the Turtles, as we progress through this, are going after Shredder because they believe that he has what is necessary,
right,
to turn Splinter back into a human.
Right. We learn from Shredder that he is responsible for the Turtles and for Splinter's transformation, that the mutagen came from him.
Right. But the way the mutagen, it's weird because, at least to this point in our story, if you go back, if you remember how they did it in the origin, the mutagen kind of just like fell on them. It didn't seem purposeful.
Right.
It's not like Shredder was there with a gun and shooting this mutagen down at the sewer. It was just, it may have been mutagen that he was experimenting with that just got plopped in this manhole kind of thing. But yeah, he's kind of guilty by association in terms of responsibility for the Turtles.
Yeah, and then later in the season, he tells them that he has an anti-mutagen ray. What does he call it? An anti-mutagen ray generator, which factors in later at the end of the season when they try to, get Splinter transformed back into his human self of Hamato Yoshi.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that's episode 2. In episode 3, we meet who becomes a mainstay in Ninja Turtles TV and comics. It's our first introduction to Baxter Stockman.
Yeah.
And he's developed a technology called Mousers, which he is exhibiting by testing them in a maze to find a rat. And rather than like detecting the rat and following it through the maze, they just chomp through the walls to get to the rat. So Shredder learns about this new technology from Baxter Stockman and wants to use the technology to create an army of Mousers to search for the biggest rat in New York City, which is Splinter.
You know what I find interesting about this whole thing? First of all, is it's funny because having read the comics and like the original comics and some of the movies, the later movies, I can't remember. Okay, in the second movie, Secret of the Ooze, that English guy wasn't Baxter Stockman, right?
No, he wasn't.
Okay. So in that case, unless I'm getting my memories sort of mixed up and jumbled, in the comics, Baxter Stockman was always a person of color. So it took me a second when I saw this show. It's like, oh, all right, that's Baxter Stockman. It's like I had to kind of retrain it's like, oh yeah, okay. because it's been so long since I've been going back and reading the comics, the originals, and now the IDW stuff. And then Tyler Perry played Baxter Stockman in the 2014 and 16 or the 16 movie. That now I like the automatic association is that okay, Baxter's a person of color, and predominantly I'll say he has been more than not. So this
Don't
is I'm not
both
saying,
versions have a bow tie though?
I believe they do. Yeah, that's the consistent. And he's always being berated by Shredder. So I mean, there's nothing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just took me a second to kind of like okay, readjust my. I'm like, who is that? And I'm like, okay, it's Baxter Stockman. That was kind of unique. The other thing is when he's showing that the first sort of prototype to that potential investor, the way it just devours that rat. I mean, they don't show it in a graphic way, but it pretty much swallows the rat whole. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty serious for a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I got a kick out of that. I'm like, I don't know if Peter's gonna like this episode, but all right, we'll go with it.
And somehow the Mousers are like finally attuned to Splinter because they go directly after him. Like they crash through the walls of the Turtles' lair in the sewer to get him.
They did a good number on that sewer. And it's cool the way it was animated in terms of as they're sort of like coming towards Splinter and they're sort of surrounding him. I love the way it was shot and framed in the sense that you see it from both angles. So you see the point of view aspect of as if they're coming at you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you see them coming out of the screen at you.
Yeah. And then it spins and you see them sort of engulfing Splinter. So you get both the sort of the aspect of, oh my God, they're coming at me. And then you can kind of feel Splinter's kind of claustrophobia, if you will, in those moments, or what would have been his claustrophobia in those moments. So I thought it was shot really well.
Yeah, well done, well directed. Nice job by the art direction to put you into Splinter's like mindset there.
Yeah.
And then also in this episode, we learned that Krang is angry with Shredder because Shredder is using resources to produce these Mousers instead of making a body for Krang, which is what he has promised to do.
I mean, he's getting impatient, and that's understandable, I would think, right?
Yeah, man. He's like, what are you doing messing around with these turtles, man? I don't care about these stupid turtles. In fact, Krang helps one of the turtles he helps Michelangelo out of a sticky situation later because he's so pissed off at Shredder.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, go get him. I don't care. He's fed up with it. It's like, go teach him a lesson. You know, he needs a bit of a beatdown, which I thought was funny. Is this not the episode as well where they where they find what would become the turtle van?
Yes. So they do start driving around in a plain yellow unmarked van in this episode. In the next episode, episode 4, is when Donatello transforms it into the turtle van that we all know.
But here's where they find the van, yeah.
Right. So we're getting pieces, in
of
each
the mythology,
episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
This was the episode where they destroyed April's apartment, though, right?
I think so.
Yeah, because the lair was in all kind of rubble, and so they had to go elsewhere, and they crashed April's apartment.
Yeah, they just show up at her front door, and she's like, "Did anyone see you?" I'm like, "Yeah, probably. It's 4 turtles and a rat. I'll bet somebody."
In New York, yeah, in an apartment in New York, chances are high that somebody would probably scope.
Yeah, they didn't even come up like the fire escape to the window. They knocked on her front door.
It's like, oh yeah. So yeah, her neighbors were either all conveniently not home or all sleeping. at this point in time. But as she, they're there because they need a place to crash, but also they need her to do research to, find more about Baxter Stockman.
Yeah.
And while she says, "All right, I'll take care of it," try not to do anything crazy while I'm looking into this. And they proceed to pretty much destroy her apartment. I love that Michelangelo's first recourse is, let me check the fridge, and
he finds the pizza in the freezer.
Yeah, I like that.
Did he even heat it up before he started eating it? Didn't he?
No, he started
take
just
it right
biting
out of the
into
box?
it. I'm like, okay, that can't be good, either for you or taste wise. It's like, I don't know if I've seen people that do this. Hot dogs, they'd eat them, they take a bite of it raw, and it's like, I don't know that that's a good idea. I've seen people do it, and I'm like, that's probably not a good idea. Anyway,
technically it's already pre-cooked. You're just heating it up. Yeah. But still, yeah.
Not something I do.
But cold meat's not high on my list of things.
Exactly. And then I like the Raphael part made me laugh because he's in the like trying to figure out the tub, and they're like, "Oh, put one capful for the bubbles," and so he grabs a cap because
a baseball cap.
Yeah, he's a turtle. He's never been out, up topside until now, and he's like, "Oh, a cap," and then everything overflows, and it's chaos.
Michelangelo does cook the pizza because remember, there's smoke coming out of the kitchen.
Yeah, but first he bites it.
Okay.
So I think he ate one frozen, and the was probably like, "Nah, you got to cook this thing," and then he did. I think Donatello did the least damage.
That's usually going to be the case because he's usually working on something and being productive.
Yeah. So I liked all that, and I think that was fun. And again, it reminds me of the movie. So, like, you could see the movie took some cues even from this, even though it was a little darker and more akin to the Mirage Comics of back in the day. It still took board from this, and why wouldn't you? Considering that, like, this animated series was a big deal.
Oh yeah, huge. It was the biggest thing that hit that summer, I'm sure.
Yeah, so it makes sense that they borrowed from that just as much as they did the Mirage comics.
Well, so. the movie's a good blend of the two because there was the adult or probably closer to teenage audience that was reading the comics, and they wanted to appeal to them in the movie. But you also have 7 and 8-year-olds who have been watching this cartoon for 2 years, and they're going to want to go see the movie as well. So if you can pick and choose, bits and pieces from each one that might fit into the story that you're telling, then there's a little bit of something for everybody who is already a fan.
Yeah, and that first movie really was a perfect blend of the animated series and the Mirage Comics. I think it's a blend they've been chasing ever since. And I don't think they've been able to, at least in live action, to replicate it since.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the magic of the 1990 movie, yeah, you're right. It's been tried a few times, but
it's funny because the 03 animated series kind of does a good blend of the Mirage comic with the late 80s cartoon. So the next iteration of the cartoon does more of a better blend of what they're still trying to achieve in live action since 1990. So yeah, it's kind of interesting in that way. But But yeah, I'm trying to think. Anything else that we missed that happens in this episode?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
Episode 4, my favorite episode.
Okay.
Of the first 5, for one simple reason.
Mm-hmm.
Neutrinos.
Yeah.
I love me some neutrinos. They are hep cats, daddy-o.
Indeed, they are.
We get the neutrinos, so this is the first time that the portal to Dimension X is actually opened, and through that portal come these hot-rodding teenagers from Dimension X named the Neutrinos that are flying what looks like futuristic versions of like old 1950s sedans, but they're flying cars.
Somebody on this production had to have seen Back to the Future with the whole flying car thing.
I mean, it was 2 years after that first movie ended with roads where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah.
So that's, probably in the thoughts and minds of a lot of people who were involved in these types of stories. Yeah. But in addition to the neutrinos, we meet some of Krang's army who come through, the Stone Warriors, specifically General Krag, is it? Who's like the leader of Krang's forces in Dimension X.
Yeah.
And then in this episode also, Donatello completes his work on the turtle van, and we see it in its full glory for the first time.
Oh, it was fantastic too.
Yeah, man. He just starts ripping pieces off of it, and like he's got like a pile of crap that is just mix mash, bunch of old electronics and stuff like that, and he's like, yeah, I can do something with this. He just rips a panel off the side of the van and just starts screwing in a chair to it.
So they never really say it, but when you see something like that, you have to assume that the turtles have some enhanced strength, correct?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's ever explicitly said, at least in the initial foray of the cartoons, but you have to assume that. Because how else are you just going to be able to rip, the doors and everything off of the van? What's awesome about the van is, like, it's got the turtle branding all over it, right? It's like the 1989 Batmobile in that way, where there's a freaking bat logo on the tires. I'm not complaining, but I'd actually want some of those tires, but I digress. But it's a much cooler. I mean, look, they could probably be a little bit more conspicuous if April was just driving around in that yellow van, but it wouldn't be nowhere near as cool.
Heck no.
I mean, they got sonar in there.
And radar. You wouldn't sell as many toys either.
Yeah. You got radar in there, damn it. And I like
Donatello hooked it up.
Yeah, and I like how the guys are, the rest of the guys are like, Leonardo's like, oh, we need some more room in the roof. And he's like, why? He's like, so I can train while we're on the way. And it's like, so he never stopped training.
He says they need 3 more feet added to the van.
So each of the turtles, except for the other 3 guys, want something. Like Michelangelo wants an oven to cook pizzas.
Pizza oven, yeah.
He wants a friggin' trailer, not a like a trailer bus. He doesn't want a van. And I can't remember what Raphael wanted.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
But you're right. The neutrinos were cool because they really kind of herald in the more sci-fi aspect of the TMNT.
And they're cool characters, they're fun-loving teenagers who, the Stone Warriors say that the neutrinos won't pick a side in the war. They won't fight for either side. All they want to do is have fun. And, to 6- and 7-year-olds who are watching this, that's all they want to do too, is hang out with their friends and have fun. They don't want to fight.
Yeah. And of course, what's cool is that, as there often is when, one set of heroes meets another, there's a disagreement and there's a bit of a scuffle at the start. But then they come to an understanding and work together.
Yeah, they figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah. And you could already see, as much as a cartoon would allow, to that age group, you can already see that Michelangelo is a little bit has eyes for one of the neutrino characters.
Yeah, what was her name?
I can't remember her name, but it was the girl, the female one. It was.
Yeah, and now, like, the whole time he's kind of like macking on her. I'm like, dude, she was riding in the car with that other guy, and he's like right here.
Yeah, and Michelangelo just doesn't seem to care. But that's cool because it's something that's played up in the IDW comics a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So it was quite cool to see that. And then they kind of do work together to foil Shredder's first attempt at bringing people over from Dimension X. And they actually find their way. They're able to get back home thanks to Donatello and the Turtles. I was actually surprised that they didn't keep him there for like a two-parter early on to start. They could have done that if they wanted to, I think.
Yeah, and in my mind, more neutrinos is good neutrinos.
Yeah. So I enjoyed this episode overall. Just Shredder's having some terrible luck. Just when you think he's got a viable plan in play, the Turtles always foil his attempt. So I find it really funny, and Krang is constantly ribbing him about it, saying, he's still complaining about his body, obviously, but he takes every chance to bully and sort of pick on Shredder in regards to the fact that you and your imbecile team can't get it done. Which made me think of something. It's always, don't you find it's always the guy that isn't necessarily the biggest guy that's the bully? And that's kind of true of this character, right? I mean, on paper, you could just literally Shredder could stab him with the gloves on his hands that have blades in them.
But he wants Krang's technology.
Yeah, but it's just like this little creature that you'd think on the surface could be disposed of so easily is the one sort of calling the shots, which is kind of funny.
He seems to have the power in the relationship.
He does, yeah, he does. And we'll talk about that more. There's a scene in episode 5 where I was laughing out loud. It was good. I do want to mention though, because we didn't mention it. I think we'd be remiss not to mention it. But I remember back in the first episode or two where, like, at every chance the Turtles were eating pizza, be it for their dinner or their breakfast. Man, they put some weird crap on pizza.
One that Michelangelo mentions is anchovy and peanut butter.
Yeah.
There's one pizza with ice cream on it.
Yeah.
Which, to me, the cold of the ice cream mixing with the hot of the pizza, I don't think my mouth is ready for that combination.
Yeah, I can't see that being good.
I mean, it's one thing to put like cold ice cream on like hot pie or
Yeah.
cobbler or something like
But
that.
that
Like,
already has the sweetness associated with it.
yeah.
Right?
I'm not sure about. I mean, when we're off this call, I'm probably going to make myself a big bowl of strawberry ice cream. But
But you're not going to put it on pizza.
I don't see myself slapping that on a pepperoni.
I mean, if you do, let me know. Let me know how it is. But
yeah,
maybe
man.
we'll do a live tasting. I saw YouTube channels doing a live tasting of that. You know, remember that Batman calzone?
Oh yeah.
I saw people doing reviews of that, so it's like, so maybe if you do experiment with ice cream on pizza, film a review and we'll put it up on the channel in honor of the TMNT episode. But yeah, so I thought that was weird. But even April's like, pass me a slice of the pepperoni and banana. I'm like, what? How does that look? I love pepperoni as much as the next guy, and banana? No,
thanks.
As an Italian, I got to draw the line. You ain't putting banana on my pizza. I'm sorry. If I want a fruit, it's after the pizza, not simultaneously on the pizza. So I just have to call out their assault on pizza that was perpetrated during the course of these episodes. But anything else you want to say on 4 or?
No, I don't think so. Just yeah, it's my favorite, and that's been the case ever since I was a kid. I had them on, I recorded the episodes off TV, and I would always watch the Neutrino one.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
They were just super cool.
They're cool characters, I agree.
Episode 5. This is the one that we mentioned earlier when Shredder has created a retro mutagen ray generator, which he says can restore Splinter back to his human form. But Splinter is hesitant to, the turtles are like, yeah, we got to get this. But Splinter's like, well, if he can turn me back into a human, he can turn you guys back into ordinary turtles. So he is a little hesitant on the whole plan of trying to get this ray, but the turtles are all for it.
And I think that's a smart observation to make. Sorry to interject, but
yeah,
that's a smart observation to make, and it shows that how wise Splinter is, like that he's thinking ahead of that. Whereas the turtles, they literally, I think for the first time, so far in the 5, they're really playing up their youth and the fact that they're teenagers here, because they're ready to run in weapons out but they're not thinking, what if he turns that on us, right? So you see the experience factor of Splinter at play here, and I like that.
Yep. This also gives us the first sighting of the turtle blimp, which was one of my favorite toys. I don't remember if the blimp toy detached from the glider part. I don't think it did. I think they were one. I think they were together and it didn't detach.
I think it was 1P. Yeah.
But in the episode, the blimp detaches and we get who is it? Michelangelo and Raphael on the glider. Yeah. And then Shredder, not Shredder, Splinter ends up destroying the ray gun, so Shredder can't turn the turtles back into ordinary turtles. And at the end of the episode, Donatello reverses the pull of the interdimensional portal so that the Technodrome is sucked inside the portal back to Dimension X.
Here's why I like this episode, and why it's probably my favorite of the 5. The reason why it is because we get that payoff of Splinter and the Turtles versus Shredder, where like every episode was building to this. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now we get it. And also, to be fair, April gets her story, which is another payoff that was promised from episode 1. But again, that's another piece that I like. It shows that, she was with them the entire time pretty much, but
Yeah.
the whole time she's concerned about, I got to get the story, I got to get the story. So they're showing that, yeah, she was a damsel in distress in the first one, but they're still trying to play her up as a good reporter.
Oh yeah, she definitely has a lot of agency in the show.
Yeah. So
she's not just the damsel who gets kidnapped by the bad guys in every episode, and they have to figure out a new way to save her.
Yeah.
She works with the turtles. She's part of the team.
Yeah, so I like that a lot in terms of that aspect. But again, the real takeaway for me and the real joy of this episode was we finally get that fight that we're waiting for. And then in the midst of all that fighting, you see how smart Donatello is to be able to do what you said, where he reconfigured the machine to take the Technodrome and everything in it to Dimension X instead of the other way around, bringing everything from Dimension X to Earth. So Shredder and Krang are taken there. And it's funny because Krang is all happy. I'm home,
Right.
Now I'm in control. And Splinter's like, well, I don't want to be here. I want to be back on it. And he's like, I'm in charge now. And he's like, no one controls the Shredder. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a second. You've basically taken orders from this guy for 5 friggin' episodes.
The whole time.
And you want me to believe that you're some sort of leader, and that's the one thing. Don't get me wrong, Shredder was very menacing. The voice work by James Avery, who is also Uncle Phil. Let that sink in, folks. Was excellent, and he did sound very menacing.
Yeah.
But and he looked menacing with the animation. But the amount of times that he gets his ass handed to him, or gets talked down to by Krang, if you have any illusions that this guy is in control, they're shattered pretty quickly. So I was laughing when he said, nobody controls me. I'm like, all right. You keep telling yourself that.
Now you're really stuck in a bad place, because now you're in the place where Krang is like an ultimate warlord, and he has forces at his command.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And also the Turtles get their sort of, April tries to sort of, in her news report, sway the public.
Yeah.
Try to change the narrative a bit, which was kind of nice. The other thing we didn't talk about really that I think we should touch on, I think the animation in this show is fantastic.
Yeah.
We talked about the look of Shredder, but I like the look of the Turtles. Yes, their faces all look pretty much identical. They're all exactly the same size. And if it weren't for the bandana or the letter on their belt, you probably won't be able to tell the difference. But the animation still look great. And the voice work by the 4 guys that did the Turtles really sells it, because that's where you get the distinct personalities coming through.
Very true. Because you're right, they are all drawn the same, except for the initial that's on their belt and the color of their headbands and wrist and elbow and knee pads.
And this show was the genesis of that, because in the comics up to that point, they all had red bandanas. But the creators of the show were like, okay, if we do that, the kids aren't going to know who's who.
And you can sell a lot more toys when you have
4 different ones, yeah.
When you have 4 characters that are very identifiable from each other.
And each one is like, every kid's going to have their own favorite.
Oh, yeah. So
that's another bonus. So the animation was stellar, I thought. I'm still okay. Now again, it's not always the case. There is some really good animation out there today. See Masters of the Universe Revelation. Really see that show, because it was great.
It's great.
But there are still scenarios where I still think that the animation from the shows of our youth, in certain instances, hold up better than some of the stuff we're seeing today.
Well, I think a show like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think it holds up better than the original Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
I mean, the animation of Revelation is just superb.
Yeah.
But it was difficult for me when I went back to watch old episodes of the original Masters of the Universe, well, original He-Man show. Just the animation, something about it seemed very dated to me, and I didn't really get the same type of feeling when I was watching these 5 episodes.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's no slight to the original Masters of the Universe. I can still watch it and put myself in that space and enjoy it. It just like that one singles itself out as, all right, this was the 80s, right? Like this was 80s animation. Whereas with the Turtles, you can kind of like, could pass for 90s, could pass for 2000. Like it's in that sweet spot where it's like you can't really put a pin in it. I mean, once you start hearing some of the lines and the dialogue and the music, then you can place it. But in terms of the animation itself, it still, I think, holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I think so.
So you got to give credit where credit is due to the voice actors and the animation. And in terms of theme songs for an animated series,
top notch.
It's up there. Right? It's right up there. It's one of the greater ones because it was the whole tune. It wasn't just one word or one note. And like, don't get me wrong, I love the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe one, but that's more the tune of it, because the rest of it's He-Man talking,
right,
narrating his the whole spiel. Like, I love the tune. I could hum it right now. I'm not going to subject the viewing audience to that. Maybe.
And the theme song of this introduces you to all 4 turtles, and it tells you a little something about each one.
But it's a song throughout the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not each turtle talking and saying, "Hey, I'm so and so, and here's the theme." So that's the difference. Where this one's a song, and the He-Man one, it's the theme you're going for. So there's 2 things that appeal to you from the 2 shows. One is the theme. One is the whole song. Like, it's catchy. I can go on. So yeah, I got to give a shout out to that too. But yeah, I love this. So if there isn't anything else, is there anything specific you want to mention? Before we give a grade?
No, I don't think so.
All right, then go ahead. Let's do, since we're doing it all at once, rate the whole miniseries. I mean, we already said individually what our favorite is, so we've done that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are we rating it on here? Is this a letter grade?
Letter grade, yeah, for this one, yeah.
Oh man, this is an A for me. You already mentioned the animation holds up, and again, you got to look at who it was drawn for. This wasn't drawn for the discerning 41-year-old in 2022. This was drawn to appeal to a younger crowd in the mid to late 80s, and it still holds up. It looks great, and the storytelling, I really love that they started out with each episode can stand on its own, and it has its own beginning and end. But there's one storyline, one through line. Actually, not just one. There's several storylines that are leading through the whole season. There's Krang trying to get his body. There's Dimension X. There's the Turtles trying to get Splinter turned back into a human.
Yeah. There's Shredder trying to beat his old rival. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, this is an A across the board. I think it's fantastic, and it makes me want to watch the second season immediately.
Which we will do, but not right now. But not on this episode, because we could go on forever. For me, strong animation, great voice work.
Yeah.
And a very easily digestible, but straightforward, but entertaining through-line storyline. But like you said, they stand on their own individually as well. So in terms of animation and the schedule of when these things air, you could just pick one and go, and then kind of get your bearings of where everything is. So it works on all fronts, and I think these turtles really. I mean, the comic was a phenomenon back in the day among comic book fans, but this animation and this animated series really turned these characters into a pop culture craze, to the point where this interpretation of the turtles is still produced on T-shirts in 2022. What does that tell you? So that says it all. And I'm going to say that for me, I also echo your sentiments and give it an A. So that's season 1. Obviously, we're not going to do every season all in a row because the episode order increases as the seasons go on. So we'll probably do blocks of 2 or 3 as we go through. But before we do our next episode that kicks off season 2 of the animated series, you can talk to us about the Turtles on social media. So, Chris, where do they track you down?
Well, on Twitter, you can find me at Chris N. Harrelson, or you can search for Commodore Schmidlap. That's my screen name on Twitter. I should pop up. And on Facebook, Adam will post a link to this episode in the group, and I will be in the group to chat to anyone who would like to chat.
Indeed, and the link to the group is somewhere in the description below. Click that, and I will definitely add you, as Chris alluded to. But if you want to track me down on Twitter, it's at Adam_LeafsFan. That's my personal account, but I talk nerd stuff on there all the time, so feel free. If it's just the show handle, it's at MMNPDC. That's mainly just me posting the episode, and you can find the links and access them there. But if somebody sends me a message or tweets me on that account, I will certainly answer you from there as well. So you have options. But until next time, remember that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are forever. From their first strange slice of pizza to the last. So long, and Cowabunga.
Take care, everyone.